most of you for quite a long while, but there are a few new people that we're really happy to have. And I'm really happy to have Keith Baker here today to share with us some of the work he's been doing at the commission level and some of the things that he is seeing ahead. For those of you that are new in the community, Keith has lived here for, has it been 17 years?
Pretty close, yeah.
17
Over
years.
16.
And he has worked in many different capacities since he's been here. He and his wife Evelyn
Judy?
were the owners of the trailhead, and I'm sure most of you have been in there at some point in time. And after they left the trailhead, Keith really jumped almost full-time into public service. And he was a town trustee for 4 years. Is that right? 4 years?
8 years.
Oh, 8, okay. And then, and during that time, he was mayor pro tem, and he served as county commissioner for 4 years now. And I feel like, as much as anyone possibly could, Keith knows this county from one end to the other, and he knows a lot about it. And not only does he know a lot about it, but I think he does a wonderful job of talking to people, finding out what their needs are, and really trying to hone in on the things that are important. So of course, we are really hoping that he will spend another 4 years on the county commission because he's already so embedded in the work that's being done and that needs to be done in the next 4 years. So, Keith, I'll leave it up to you.
Thank you. Oh, thanks everybody for coming out on your Saturday afternoon and spending some time together. And I'll try to answer some questions and everything a little bit later on. Judy gave you a pretty good thumbnail of who I am. I grew up in North Georgia, which you might be able to tell by my accent, and served in the Navy for 23 years and had a variety of assignments while I was in the Navy. I went in to be a pilot, and I got almost to my winging date, and then I started getting ophthalmologic migraines in my left eye, blurred vision. I didn't get headaches, didn't get nausea, didn't get any of the other symptoms that you get from migraine sometimes, so I was lucky that way. So I became a surface ship officer and served in cruisers and destroyers, and then I had shore assignments and staff assignments. Got a master's degree in international relations, and the highlight of my career ashore was I served on the joint staff in Washington, D.C. And in that capacity, I did a lot of policy coordination, working with lots of other departments and agencies, and managing big projects and managing big international exercises and operations with our allies and other countries. And when 9/11 happened, I'd only been retired about 9 months. And some of the things that initially happened after that, I felt a fair amount of pride in, because we had basing agreements with the countries in Central Asia like Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, and the Caucasus countries, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and the Republic of Georgia, which I'd helped get in place in the mid-90s. When the Soviet Union collapsed, we had all these new countries come along, 11 new countries, and we had to find ambassadors for them, we had to find military attachés for them, we had to find all these different people for them. And as luck would have it, I got to be the first desk officer at the joint staff for these countries. I didn't speak Russian, and I hadn't been to foreign language school, but the admiral that was the head of our branch knew me pretty well, and he put me in that job. So it was really something that I took a great deal of joy in doing, because I'd always read, as a kid, you read Kipling and all these other things. You read about Samarkand and all these other countries in the Silk Road. And as a kid growing up, it's like, well, I'm never going to get to visit there because that's the Soviet Union. That's behind the Iron Curtain. And then they started standing up this organization, and he had us all together one morning, and he was talking about who was going to be in this new organization. And I was like, wow, that would be great, but I'm not qualified for it, and I wish I could do that, and that would be great. And he said, so we've got 5 people who are trained for this, but I'm authorized 6 bodies, so the 6th person is going to be, my Navy call sign was Chet, so he said Chet Baker. And I was like, wow, it was like Christmas morning, I want this special toy, but my parents can't afford it, and I got it anyway. So I was really tickled about that. So that was kind of the highlight of my staff career and working and all that stuff. So that gave me a skill set that really helps me out in this work, doing a lot of interagency coordination and collaboration, and a lot of communicating with my 2 other commissioners and our staff, and commissioners in other counties, and people at the state level, people at the federal level, our congressional delegation, all those sorts of people, because once you've sat across the table from Colin Powell and told him something that you knew he wasn't going to be too tickled to hear about, that gives you a good bit of confidence to tell somebody like Michael Bennett or Corey Gardner or Representative Lamborn or one of their staff people that this is something we need in Chaffee County. This is something that our citizens definitely need, and we need you to go to bat for us on this. Our broadband is totally inadequate, and honestly, people don't think you're fighting hard enough for rural broadband. So please put forth a little bit more effort in working for us on rural broadband or rural transit or whatever the case may be, whatever the need is, whatever the situation is, because they don't sign my paycheck like General Powell did, so I'm more than happy to tell them what you want me to tell them and what I think they need to hear. One of the questions that often comes up is, what does a county commissioner do? And that's just one of the things that we do, or that I do. We have issues portfolios, we call them. Like, I deal a lot with roads and bridges. I deal a lot with pending legislation. I deal a lot with coordination and collaboration with the other surrounding counties. And then we have regional organizations like the Colorado Department of Transportation is divided up into districts, regions, and we're in Region 5, which may not make a lot of sense to you. It's headquartered in Durango. And then to make it even a little bit less understandable, the regions are divided into transportation planning regions. And Region 5 is divided into 2. There's the Southwest Transportation Planning Region, which is also headquartered in Durango. And then there's the San Luis Valley Transportation Planning Region, TPR, which is headquartered in Alamosa. So we're in the San Luis Valley TPR. We're not in with Leadville, we're not in with Canyon, we're in with Alamosa. So when you look at the Southwest Region TPR on the map, it kind of makes sense, and then there's Chaffee County sticking up like a thumb out of it. So all these different organizations, the Upper Arkansas Council of Governments, the Upper Arkansas Workforce Development Council, the Substance Abuse Regional Coalition, I mean, there's a list as long as your arm. They're all somewhat different. Some things we're in with Lake and Fremont and Gunnison County. Some things we're in with the San Luis Valley. So there's a number of those regional organizations that I represent you on. And one of the big ones is the San Luis Valley Transportation Planning Region. So I work roads and bridges. I work a lot of legislative issues. I serve on the Upper Arkansas Workforce Development Council and a variety of others. Those are some of the bigger ones that I work on. The County Health Coalition, Substance Abuse Regional Council, and as I said, a host of others. Now, one thing I want to mention, one of those organizations that I work with closely before I forget, because we got these young mothers and their young children over here, the silent killer or the silent crisis in the affordable housing issue and workforce development is childcare. Affordable housing gets so much of the bandwidth that people don't think about childcare. But that is a problem that we continue to work on. There's the Chaffee County Early Childhood Council, which is headed by a woman named Janine Pryor. That name is kind of familiar. Her husband, Wendell Pryor, is the executive director of the Economic Development Corporation. And Janine has a working group which has people from human services, the school districts, the public health department, and a whole variety of others that work together to try to identify ways to improve child care in the county. And one of the big ways that crosses over into legislation, and one of the ways that I'm involved, is to try to remove administrative barriers to allow child care in homes and smaller child care facilities, so people don't have to spend $150,000 modifying their house or modifying a small retail space or something to make a child care facility out of it. Because you have to be at least able to break even to make it worth doing. If you can't break even, you can't make any money, then that's a severe impediment to opening up a child care facility. And a lot of these laws and regulations are well intended, but they just get to be insurmountable. Now, something that we did, because the Colorado Counties Incorporated, my fellow commissioners and I, and members of the legislature, got something approved last year which prohibits an HOA from forbidding in-home child care in the HOA's area. So like if there's a prohibition on child care in Ivy League out here, then that prohibition can be lifted now, or will be lifted. Now, of course, they still have to comply with noise ordinances and parking, because those are things that really concern people. But like game trail, 3 elk, 4 elk, Mesa Antero, you hear people say, we need some child care here, but our HOA forbids it. Well, now they'll be able to have a small in-home child care facility there. Hi there. That's not Jade, is it?
No, that's Brooke.
Brooke, you're Jade.
This one's Jade.
That one's Jade. Okay. So, okay, what does a county commissioner do? One of the big things that we've just been doing is we review the county budget, and we approve the county budget. And statutorily, we have to do that before the end of the year. The budget is made up of several different funds: enterprise fund, road and bridge fund, airport funds. We have several different funds that we manage, and we don't manage them. The finance department manages them. We establish the policy and where we think the priorities should be and how that money is spent. But there are a lot of restrictions, restraints, and constraints on how and where the money can be spent. I mentioned our human services department and our public health department. A lot of their projects and priorities are funded from the federal government through the state. And these are things that come from the Departments of Health, the Department of Agriculture, a lot of different ones. And they help us do things like our public health programs, our substance abuse programs, our crisis management teams, all those other sorts of things, and a lot of our educational programs. So even though it's in our budget, it doesn't come out of our tax money directly. It comes out of our federal tax money. It comes out of, like a lot of our road and bridge money, just about all of our road and bridge money comes out of our gasoline taxes through a program called the Highway User Trust Fund. But a lot of that money comes to the county. Now, I forget who it was it Martha or Judy? Who was it said something about you couldn't believe how big the county's budget is? That was Judy. It's what we're looking at for next year. If you don't know, is we're looking at roughly $34 million for the Chaffee County budget. And a lot of that is discretionary, but a lot of it isn't. A lot of it is that health and human services type of money that's already allocated and earmarked for certain programs. We have about $4 million that we get from property taxes, and out of the general fund, that's $4 million of about $15 million that we have discretionary over. So we can't really spend a lot of general fund money on roads and bridges, So very little of your property tax money goes to road maintenance. And that's something, when you get your tax bill, there's usually a little yellow card in there. I should have gotten one and brought it with me. But it shows where if you pay $1 for taxes, where how many cents go to what programs and projects. It's got them all listed on there. And that's something that's kind of interesting for you to look at if you get a chance. So budget is a big thing. And then general county administration, like all the services that you're paying for and that you expect. When you call the county administrative offices with a problem or something that you think is a great idea, and Patty Baldwin takes the message and calls me or emails me or Greg or Rusty and says, this citizen wants you to give them a call back, and we call you back, you have a reasonable expectation that the county is going to try to address your need, that the county is going to try to address your problem. And that's really one of the big things that we do, or what congressional people in bigger counties that have an assistant for these things, they call it a constituent services representative or a constituent services assistant. We don't have one of those. I'm it. So if somebody has a tree that falls down in the creek as a result of the snowstorm and they need it removed, and for whatever reason they're unable to, and they call the office to find out about it, they get me. They get me on the phone. It probably takes me calling them back or whatever. But that's one of the big things that we spend a lot of time on, are those constituent services sort of thing, like roads. Now here, we don't deal with Ivy League roads because you guys are in a subdivision. We haven't taken any subdivision dedication since 1994. There's been a resolution on the books since then that the county just can't afford to take any additional roads dedicated, so it's up to the subdivision to maintain those. But like Rodeo Road, 306, all those others, we do maintain those. I'm kind of rambling here because things are so broad and the list is so long. Yeah.
Could you just quickly address some of the primary issues that you see ahead for the county for the next 4 years?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. And there's some things we need to button up that are still in progress that are going to cross over. If I get reelected or one of my opponents gets elected, that the trains are going down the track fast enough that they're probably going to have to see them through to the finish. But childcare is one of the big ones. We're going to have to continue to work on that. We did accomplish something last week when the schoolhouse in Poncha Springs opened up to provide some childcare and early childhood education there. We need to have that sort of thing up here on this end, and we're working to do that. Continuing to work on affordable housing. We're almost there on an organization called the Multi-jurisdictional Housing Authority. We have a housing trust here in the county. We have the Housing Policy Advisory Committee. We have Habitat for Humanity that I know some of you have been involved with. But none of those organizations alone can answer the need on affordable housing. And the county can't answer the need on affordable housing. A multi-jurisdictional housing authority can do a lot of things that the housing trust can't do, that government can't do, that Habitat can't do. But the way that works is we're working on an interagency agreement with the 3 municipalities in the county. And we've got 2 of the 4, and we're pretty confident that Buena Vista is going to approve it and sign it. The one outlier out there that we're having to manage pretty carefully is Poncha Springs. They have some concerns. I guess sometimes their relationship with the city of Salida doesn't go quite as smoothly as they would all hope. So they have a few misgivings about entering an interagency agreement there without some things being clearer, or without some things being guaranteed better, that they won't cause problems down the line. But we're almost there on the Multi-jurisdictional Housing Authority. And if we get that, and if we do that, then that'll give us a lot more tools that we can use to help answer the affordable housing problem. As you know, we've done some things like Collegiate Commons here in BV, the farm in BV, the Housing Trust has been very involved in helping to get some costs down. the comprehensive plan has some great ideas, and we have some visionary things that we want to do after this comp plan is done, and we revise the land use code to encourage what people have always said. They want to see new growth develop around the municipalities. They don't want to see it out in the middle of the county. And if you're talking affordable housing, you certainly don't want it out there, because now you've just turned a housing problem into a transportation problem. And even if people can afford car, truck, or they can ride a bike or whatever, the additional traffic on something like Rodeo Road or 306 or 361 is going to be a burden. And we have to maintain the roads. People are going to want multi-weather cycling paths and all these other sorts of things, and we just don't have the tax base to do that. So we need to focus that growth around the municipalities, and that requires, if we're smart, that the county and the municipalities talk together about how we're going to do that, about where that's going to be, and then where that infrastructure is going to be, roads, water, sewer, broadband, all those things that if we can provide those services in the adjacent parts of the county, it helps bring those construction costs down. And then if we can allow a higher density there, multifamily developments, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, courtyard bungalows, apartments, those sorts of things just immediately adjacent to the municipality. So that's a big one on the affordable housing front. One thing, and this is really dry, just small b bureaucratic stuff that I want to do in a second term, is to memorialize a lot of the things that we've been doing and reach back to that interagency experience in Washington to write some manuals, doctrines about how you do interagency coordination and collaboration, about how you work with 3 municipalities. A lot of counties don't have 3 municipalities, or if they do, there's one so much bigger than the others that they don't have the challenges like we do with Salida and Poncha and BV and Salida and that north-south rivalry that we've always heard about, because BV has interests that they don't share, we don't share with Salida, and it works the other way around. We have to understand that, but that doesn't mean we have to acquiesce to everything they always want. We have our own set of priorities and our own set of interests, and even though I don't really represent District 1, we have these districts so that there's geographic distribution of the commissioners, so that you don't have 3 commissioners living on the same street in Salida, and they're all together and they all ride to and from work together or whatever. But we represent everybody in the county. That's why some people don't understand, if I'm in District 1, then they live in Salida, how do they get to vote for me? And the same thing if they live in if they live up here, how do they vote for Greg or Rusty or whoever for District 2 and District 3? That's because we represent the entirety of the county. But I want to try to memorialize that so that whoever follows has something they can refer to that says, if I'm trying to do this and I need to get consensus from the other 3 municipalities, how do I go about doing that? There's things like, the other day I was talking with somebody down in Salida, and they had a state highway city street issue. And they said, well, why don't you call the public works director or the planner in Salida and talk with them about it? And I said, I'm not going to do that. I will talk to P.T. Wood, I'll talk to the mayor, but those people don't work for me. And if I go in there and start saying, well, I was talking to somebody over here on Oak Street, and here's what they want you to do, that just gums up the works, and it doesn't foster good relationships. And honestly, we have a lot of that around here. And it winds up costing more time, it results in inefficiencies, and it results in a lot of angst. And that's just not the right way to do business, but sometimes I suspect there's method behind it, and sometimes I think it's just a lack of awareness of the way to do things. So that's one of the things I want to do. Does that get big headlines? No. Is it going to make a lot of people excited? Hey, Baker's working on this. No, but it's something that needs to be done for us to mature as a county and to be more efficient and to deliver better services quicker and more efficiently and effectively to the city. So that's a big thing. John, you have a question?
Well, before you move too much further from affordable housing, I work at the prison, as you know, and
Yeah.
we have a lot of people there that make, around $50,000 a year.
All right.
That's a little too much to qualify for some of the housing that has gone up to make it affordable. But it's not really enough to
Right.
be able to have your own place and live out here. And I know a teacher who came out here, worked about 6 months, and then had to leave. He stayed in the temporary housing that they give you at the prison, but that's only for a certain amount of time. It's not really a livable situation. And so I was just curious, how does it work? How does affordable housing work strategically? Like you're trying to accomplish an overall objective, allowing people that we need in our community to come and live here to provide the services we need in our community. So the objective is to bring in the teachers, to bring in people who are making that middle area. What's the strategy that the county is doing so that there's allowing them to find, the type of housing that they need? Because like you mentioned those places like the Commons, I don't think that anybody at the prison qualifies for that, but people at the prison are still making, state incomes, and it's not a high income.
Well, there's lots of different policy tools that you can do to address that. And what the area that you're talking about, there's a term called AMI for area median income, and it varies by area. Like if you're in, like Bethesda, Maryland, it's probably like $300,000 a year or something. Here, nowhere near that. So 60 to 120% of AMI is really what we need to focus on to provide housing to the people you're talking about, the young professionals, people who are starting out. The kind of the stereotypical three that people mention are teachers, police officers, and bank tellers. But people in that kind of line of work to be able to afford a place to live that are really the backbone of the community. If you don't have people that have some tenure in those jobs, then that's not a good sign. You want to see the same person when you go into your bank all the time. You want your kid, if you've got children that are like 3 or 4 years apart, you want your younger kid to maybe have the same teacher in 6th grade that the older kid had. And police officers, you want to have some sort of awareness and relationship with who they are. So that 60 to 80%, and then on up 80 to 120%, those are the ones that we're really focusing on to try to get those housing costs down. And this kind of illustrates something that I talk about. The three tenets that I've talked about are building community. This is a big part of that one. Preserving our heritage, not quite as big a part of that one, except when you look at it from a land use perspective, that we're not allowing sprawl. We're trying to concentrate the growth around the municipalities. And the third one is preparing for the future. Now, in the perfect world, we just started working on this affordable housing problem about 15 or 20 years ago. And I'm not throwing rocks at my predecessors on the county commission, because we had a recession in 2008 and they had to deal with that. But ideally, you work on things ahead of time. We coulda, shoulda, woulda been doing that 15 or 20 years ago to try to establish that. Then we'd have that housing stock now. We're way behind the problem right now. We're chasing a problem, and it'll be a long time before we catch up with it, because it outran us a long time, and we have to go really fast to try to catch up with it, and it has to slow down. So we need to have incentives so that, talking about having that infrastructure, extending out the areas ripe for development in the county, the roads, the water, the sewage if we can, broadband, all those sorts of things that help drive the construction costs down. That helps bring costs down. There are certain things like incentives. If there are a certain percentage of the housing is set aside for 60 to 80% median income, there are things like bonuses. If we waive development fees like we did down at, what's it called, High Country Estates or something. It's a modular development down in Johnson Village. We waived some of their fees because they're going to make 4 or 5 of the units in there permanently affordable housing. and some other elements like that. If we waive some of the subdivision fees, so if they do want to subdivide, and we say, okay, these lots are going to go to permanent affordable housing, then we'll waive the fees for doing that. Lots of different policy tools that we can do that way that aren't just compulsory, like saying, if you build a 20 unit development, then by golly, 10 of them have to be affordable, and we're not going to do anything to help you do that. I'm not about that. I'm not about, I mean, every now and then you have to have some requirements, but I think incentives work better. Thank you. All right, so broadband, let's talk about broadband, because I've mentioned it, and I know it's on kind of the forefront of a lot of people's thinking. It certainly is mine. One of the things I was scared to death about when this whole COVID thing began, and I knew we were going to be doing a lot of remote work and a lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of teleconferences. Oh Lord, please don't let us have another week-long broadband outage. Because the one thing it would work would be my phone. And people would be calling me, understandably so. And I would be mad about it. And I would be frustrated. And I just did not want to see that. So fortunately, somebody tapped that bench there, touch wood, that we haven't had that kind of outage. We haven't had a big fire like we had a couple of years ago that took that tower down, down around Walsenburg or somewhere down there, and put us hot, dark, and quiet for a while. Or even last year, certain areas were without cell service because of Methodist Mountain up there. So we've been very lucky. And part of the reason we've been lucky is a group called Mammoth Mountain, which is out of Wyoming, developed a secondary loop so that if there is a cable or something dug up on the south end, we do have alternative routing out through the north end now. We used to only have the one cable in and out of the county, and if it ever got interdicted, you know what it was like. If you had a business, you couldn't do credit card processing. If you needed to buy something, you couldn't do credit card processing. Your cell phone, because people, you know, right now, everybody's got a cell phone. Even right now, if you're not using your cell phone or whatever, it's pinging back and forth between the antenna, and that's busying the network. So if the internet goes down and people start using their hotspot or go to their mobile device for doing all their data, that bogs down the network. That's why even in the summertime, when people come up here, everybody's got a phone on their hip. Some people have two because they got one for work and one for personal. All those phones, all those iPads are just bogging down the network. So we have to have more robust networks, not just more reliable networks, but more robust networks that we can get additional bandwidth. Now there's some things that are really messed up about the way the laws and FCC regulations are written. Imagine, if you will, this is, let's say this is Highway 24, north and south. And this is County Road 306, headed up Cottonwood Pass here. If there's one house right here in this corner, and CenturyLink or Colorado Central Telecom or Charter or whoever provides that one house service, and there's 485 other houses out here in this same census block, they get full credit for providing service to this whole census block, even if all the other 350 or 400 other houses don't get service. And that's messed up. And performance standards. They have performance standards that are way below anything that's really adequate. So what we try to get written into legislation all the time is whatever the current FCC performance standard is. They always try to get it written in as a fixed number, which is always really low. We always try to get it in whatever the FCC performance standard is, because that's in places like Atlanta, New York, San Diego, Chicago, in places where big companies rely on very high-speed internet performance. There are lots of crazy things. So there's an app that I tell people about, and I've sent it to people, and I've put it on my Facebook page. The National Association of Counties is called Test IT, and you can run it periodically. I don't run it as often as I should. I used to run it a lot. But you run a test on it. It's like a ping test, and it tells you what your upload speed and download speed is over the mobile network. So I'm running a test right now, and it will tell you if you're over or above or under the FCC standard. So mine's testing right now. And then it updates this to a database that the National Association of Counties compiles, so they can take it to the FCC and take it to Congress, and they say, when the companies say they're providing adequate service in the rural areas, they're lying to you. Because here's what we've got. So I've got download speed 5.01 megabits per second, upload 2.79 megabits per second. Connections are below FCC benchmarks, which are now 25 down and 3 up. And so this has gone into that database, and the more frequently all of us can do that, the more accurate the database will be. Now, what if you don't have a signal? It records that, and when you do get a signal, it uploads that you were in a null area or an area without service. So those are things that we continue to work on. And when we redid Cottonwood Pass Road, we did a deal with CenturyLink so they could put conduit in across Cottonwood Pass, so it's connected. Well, if it's not connected, it will be connected. That's primarily to get digital traffic over from the western slope, but it gives us another connection if we need it. So broadband is an area that we continue to work on, and we continue to make that at the forefront of everything whenever we're talking with our legislators and stuff. Community planning I've already kind of hit on. So I mentioned my 3 overarching goals or priorities or strategic level objectives are building community, and that's a multifaceted thing there, like helping people be equipped for community involvement and community service through all of our different volunteer groups and advisory committees, like our Transportation Advisory Committee, like our Early Childhood Council, like our Substance Abuse Board, our Planning Commission, our municipalities, and recruiting people and helping them prepare for future offices and volunteer work. That's a big part of community development, because this isn't the kind of job that you just step into as your first job anymore. Maybe once upon a time, being treasurer of the PTA equipped you for being a county commissioner, but not now. The problems are too complex, the list is too long, and the challenges are too big for this to be a training wheel job. I think you really need to be on a school board, you need to be on a town council, or you need to have something where you've got some pretty good board experience or something in order to do it. And I would say that if I was opposed, unopposed, or not opposed, or whatever. I just believe those are the facts, and that's a lot of the reason that I did what I did, like Judy talking about my community involvement. I didn't expect to say, hey, I'm Baker, I'm here, I'm a retired Navy officer, make me a county commissioner. I thought I needed to do some things to meet people, to learn how the county operates, to become acquainted with the processes, to ready myself for that job. They don't give you a 747 the first day you go to flight school. You know, they don't let you start doing heart surgery the first day of med school. You have to learn, you have to be trained, and you have to know what you're doing. So community development, or building community, and all that entails. Preserving our heritage, things like Maxwell Park School, Gas Creek School, St. Elmo, and honoring our Western heritage, honoring our agricultural lands, preserving our agricultural lands, our mining heritage, and our railroading heritage. Those are not just tourist items, those are some of the reasons that we live here. And then finally, preparing for the future. I think I've already mentioned that, but one thing that I always try to do is, kind of circling back to that community development piece, is to have somebody in position to succeed me. If you're the CEO of a corporation, if you're the captain of a ship, if you're the president of a bank, if you're a father or a mother who owns a small business and you want to pass it down to your children, then you need to be grooming somebody. You need to have a succession plan. If you go to get a loan for your business, they're going to ask you, what's your succession plan? What if you get killed in a wreck tonight? Or what if you have a heart attack and die? What's your succession plan? How do we know your business is a good risk? So succession planning is an important part of that too. And then we talk a lot now about purpose-driven leadership, purpose-driven management. My purpose, what animates me every day, what keeps me going, my intent is for every day that I do my utmost for the well-being of the residents of Chaffee County. And I think if I do that, then all this other stuff will take care of itself. If I work as hard as I possibly can for the well-being of every resident of Chaffee County, the broadband will take care of itself, the road will take care of itself, the water treatment will take care of itself. The floodplain in Ivy League, it's a hard one to push up the hill, but eventually we'll take care of that. And work tirelessly at it every day. So, any other questions? Yes, Clay.
We got a note in mail the other day about water rights with Nestle for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
My opinion is that water is either is or will be the next oil. I'm wondering what we as the public and you as the commissioners need to be doing to preserve water. My opinion is I don't like the idea that they're taking that much water out of the aquifers around here.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something that I don't understand.
Would you repeat the question?
Nestle and Nestle's 1041 renewal. I was talking with some people about that earlier.
Excuse me, there are some people who have just moved into the county
Right.
and don't know what our arrangement has been. So you may want to explain that.
Yeah. Nestle Waters North America, which is a division of Nestle International, the big giant food conglomerate, bought some property in the Nathrop area adjacent to the river years and years ago, and there's a spring there called the Ruby Mountain Spring, and they take water out of there, they pump it up to Johnson Village, and you may have noticed there's a little station there as you're headed up the pass. It's right there on the right next to Gunsmoke, and Nestle pulls tanker trucks in there, and that's where they board the water onto the tanker trucks, and then they drive it down to Denver. So sometimes you get behind a tanker truck on Trot Creek Pass or going through Platte Canyon. Odds are it's a tanker truck carrying Nestle water to a bottling plant in Denver. And I forget which of their brand names it's bottled under, but they bottle that water and sell it.
So I guess
So-
my question is, what is Chaffee County getting out of that? How are we being benefited? And that's what we
Okay, well, I'm going to get to all that.
Oh, okay.
So the deal is, the reason it's called a 1041, there was a law passed by the state legislature back in the 90s called, and the way the state bills are written, they're like year number and then the bill number. Like, I think this one's 95-1041. And it gives counties the ability to review certain things under what they call items of state interest, and the things that the state, we the people, the state own, like water, wildlife, air. They're generally thought of as environmental sorts of issues. It's kind of an extra level of scrutiny rather than just a land use application sort of thing. So Nestle bought this spring down there, and about 10 or so years ago, they got a 1041 approval. Now, part of what was in that 1041 was Nestle said, we'll do these philanthropic things, we'll donate this amount of money to the school boards, we'll provide bottled water for all your 10K races and all that other sort of stuff. Now, I really shouldn't comment on this much more than that because of because it is a pending application, and there are due process concerns and considerations and what are called ex parte contact, which means if Nestle doesn't have a representative here, I might say something that they're not privileged to. So those all have to be done in a public hearing, just like a land use application or anything else like that. So what happens is when somebody sends an email to me, and probably somebody here has sent me one, that it says, regarding Nestle, here's what I think. I will send you an acknowledgement that says, I received your email, but I can't talk about it. Your email has been forwarded to our planning department for inclusion in our records, and therefore it will also be provided to Nestle for them to review and to refute if they want to. And here are the dates of the hearings. October 20th, which is a Tuesday evening at the fairgrounds in Salida, and Thursday morning, October 22nd. We're doing them evening and daytime because people have work schedules and stuff. And those will also be on the internet and those other sorts of things. So that's probably the extent of what I should say about Nestle right now. There's a similar one about a gravel pit down in Salida that you may have heard some of your friends in Salida that live on Methodist Mountain or whatever talk about. And that's under BLM jurisdiction, but I still, it's like any other sort of land use decision or anything like that. I really can't talk directly about it right now.
So,
Did you have your hand up, sir?
I did. I was intrigued when you said that they bought the rights to the spring. Who did they buy it from?
Bought them from the McMurrays.
So a private owner?
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. And then they have the water right thing. This is, if you have a well, like you get 35 acres in the state subdivision law, you don't have to get it. You can buy 35 acres without going through subdivision. And you're entitled to a well without augmenting the river. It gets kind of complicated. When you say you buy an augmentation certificate from the Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District, you're not augmenting the well, you're augmenting the water because everything is tributary to a river. And so that water that you take out of your well would eventually have gotten to the river. So you have to buy makeup water for the river. So Nestle has bought augmentation water for the river. And like I said, it gets pretty complicated. But they're taking that water, they take the water out of the spring, it goes to Denver, it goes in bottles on your grocery shop.
I get that, yeah.
So does that mean we don't get to make the decision about if Nestle takes water out of that or not? If he gets their thing renewed, it's the commissioner, who?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah. And that's why I can't talk about it.
so we should say to our constituents, we really don't want that to be done anymore. And then
You
maybe,
should talk to me, you should talk to Greg, you should talk to Rusty.
But you say there's a hearing where people can
Right.
air their opinions
Yep,
on the matter.
that's on Tuesday, October 20th at 5. I'm sure it'll be well publicized. It might have been on that card that came in the mail.
Yeah, it is.
Is it? And then the other one's on Thursday morning, the 22nd.
In the same location?
Yes, at the fairground. And the hearing, because of social distancing, will have the north building, will be kind of a holding area. And we're limited, I think, to 75 people in the exhibition hall, which is the one over by the rodeo arena. And that's where we'll have the hearing. And then people can leave after they speak. And if people want to come over from the north building to speak, they can. But you can send us, go ahead and send us emails and all those other sorts of things. It needs to be, hard copy record communications. But that's one of the big ones. Yes, ma'am.
I guess my question about that is, you can't really put a value on water at this point, but are the benefits that the county is receiving qualified if,
I think that's something we'll have to consider, but I can't. Yeah.
Can you speak to the monetary income we get, the county receives from that relationship?
No, I'd have to look that up. It's probably in my briefing materials.
Is it's substantial or insubstantial?
Well, if I had to write the check, it wouldn't clear.
I mean, if you can't and the other two commissioners can't talk about it, a lot of people are sitting around here, how are we gonna find out what's?
I believe that group has a website that was on that postcard, and then Nestle has a link too. That I'll send you all that.
Or do you go
Does
to the
anybody
hearing?
Does anybody here send me an email on that? Well, then you don't need to. Trust me. Somebody was asking me how I spend my time, and I was like, even though I'm not really doing a whole lot, that's a lot of what I'm doing right now is answering emails on that saying I can't talk about it right now.
Well, do you hear at the hearings? If you go to the hearings, do you get more information, or is this
Oh,
the
yeah.
same?
Yeah, we'll get our briefing book on it. And we had this all last year when Nestle requested an extension, about a year ago. In fact, it was when we had our annual meeting in the Heritage Museum. Talking about preserving heritage, we do now have one of our meetings every year in the Heritage Museum, this year being the notable exception. We've had them for 2 or 3 years. We do that to commemorate when that was the county courthouse, and just to kind of, bring increased visibility to the fact that it used to be the county courthouse.
It's obvious that to be a commissioner, you try to do your homework and planning on that. How can a group like us sitting around here and might help you and the other two commissioners?
Well, the big thing, I guess, is to talk to them and communicate with them. The thing that's most annoying is when I hear that somebody's talking behind my back, or let's say Facebook's the bathroom wall of the 21st century, and people will say, and I'm like, well, I can't read minds. I'm not telepathic. If your road is messed up, I wish I could drive every road in the county once a month, but I can't. And do all this other stuff. I probably could do that if that's all I did. But call me, and my number is 719-963-4164, and I share that. And email is easy, to me anyway. If you know somebody in the county, and you know their first name and their last name, there's a 99% chance you can get them by saying first initial last name at chaffeecounty.org. So kbaker at chaffeecounty.org. So the best way to get hold of me is call me or text me. And it's 963-4164. And that's on my Facebook, Commissioner Facebook page. Second way is to email me. And then the way that I like the least is a Facebook comment or a Facebook message, just because it's so unreliable. But
everybody.
it's like I was telling somebody the other day. I was like, and I said it here earlier. There's nobody in this county that intimidates me. I think there's a couple of people that think they do. And I'm like, hate to tell you this, but like I said, once you've sat across the table from a 4-star general or a 4-star admiral and told them something that you knew they weren't going to like hearing, what are they going to do? Cut my hair and send me to sea? It's like, as we used to say.
Now they might.
Huh?
I said now they might if it's Washington, D.C.
But I'll take a phone call from anybody about anything. There's not.
And along those lines, remember, if you have any questions, he's the man. Ask your questions.
So I just wanted to say, if you're on Facebook, there is a Facebook group called Unbottle and Protect Chaffee County Water. And there is a group of people, and I think they're the ones that sent out the postcard, that are working, and that's where you can get a lot of information about what's wrong with this, what they think is wrong with this.
Now, some people are always asking about priorities, and I'm reluctant to say priorities because if I say roads and bridges and then something else comes up, and say, well, you said your priority was roads and bridges and you took money from roads and bridges to do this. I'm like, well, it's difficult to maintain those silos and stuff. I've got a picture on my Facebook page. Where did I put my pen? Oh, here it is. I say, okay, silos are necessary to an extent. You need to have silos because that keeps you from stepping on other people's toes and getting into their business and their areas of expertise. You know, respecting the silo is what kept me from calling up the public works director in Salida to tell him about somebody had a question or complaint about one of the Salida streets, because that person doesn't work for me. So silos are important, but my graphic depiction of silos and areas of responsibility in government is like this. If you don't know what that is, that's a silverware caddy from a dishwasher. And you have a bunch of those, and it keeps all your spoons together. It keeps all your knives together. Keeps all your forks together. Keeps them from flying around in the dishwasher and getting down in that swinging arm and in the drain and clogging stuff and getting all bent up. But it does let the water flow through and the suds to flow through and the spoons and the knives and the forks and everything to get clean. And it keeps things nice and tidy. That's my idea of a silo in anything. If it's a corporation, if it's a government agency or whatever, I mean, you do have to communicate. And sitting on information, boy, you want to talk about something that just frosts me 6 ways from Sunday. It's what I call playing I Got a Secret. It's like, and especially when people get in a meeting and they purposefully say something with the clear implication being, well, that's your area of responsibility. You're supposed to know that. Well, then why didn't you tell me about it? You ran into somebody at the checkout line in Murdoch's? Or you ran into somebody at the barber shop? Or you ran into somebody at the gas pumps? It's not City Market, Loaf and Jug. And this is where you learned about it, and you know it's my area of responsibility, then pick up the phone and call me and tell me about it. But don't get us in here in a meeting and act like you're the smartest person in the universe, and I'm a dunce, or that I'm laying down on my job. That's just not good teamwork. And we had that in the Navy. I mean, I know you've all seen it somewhere or another. But anyway, communication, collaboration, coordination, it makes for good, efficient governance and relationship. Randy Peters wanted me to talk about VRBOs, short-term rentals and things. That is something that we're working on, and we did pass an ordinance, and we are collecting fees on short-term rentals. The legislature passed a law last year that allows us to do that, and we're also working on a law, and this comes up in the context of trees and roof repair and other sort of contractor sorts of things, because of that recent snowstorm. It's kind of top of mind. To license businesses in the county. Right now, municipalities can license businesses. Counties have a very short list of things we can license. And every time there's a big snowstorm, every time there's a big wind event, and there's lots of tree damage or roof damage or something, somebody shows up and starts saying they're an arborist or something, and people wind up paying deposits or paying for services they don't receive. And people call me and say, hey, can't we do anything about this? I paid somebody $500 and I hadn't seen them again. They don't answer their phone. The the voicemail box is full. What can we do about that? Well, that's something, we get this next law passed, we'll be able to do that. So I suspect Ivy League doesn't allow short-term rentals or VRBOs, is that right?
No, they do.
They do?
Yes.
Okay, well then the county can,
But how do
we
you
can probably
know?
use our licensing authority on that.
But how do
We
you,
pay a contractor, and the municipalities are in this too. We pay a contractor to search the internet all the time for short-term rentals and stuff in Chaffee County. And if they are, then they do a comparison to see if they're licensed, to see if they're registered in the assessor's office, and they're paying all their fees and everything. And if they're not, we give them a chance to correct that, and if they don't, we shut them down. Because it is a burden on the other taxpayers.
huh,
Now, the ones that we have to go into our zoning and stuff, it's the infamous fifth wheel in the driveway. And I forget what the regulations are on those. There's some limits. I think like in the town it's 2 weeks or something. And
Are there county regulations for that?
yeah, but don't ask me what it is. I think it's 2 weeks also. If you have any issues like that, call the planning department with those. But then call me. I'm not telling you, I'm not trying to shirk my responsibility, but that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to call them. And then it just closes the circle a lot tighter and faster if you go ahead and call the planning department. You can email me, kbaker@chaffeecounty.org. Call me. You know, just, we go to bed pretty early. We get up early too.
Are your the county policies and are they all on the internet? Can we look up?
Most of them are, but there's another one. Our website. Something we are working on in this budget cycle that I really want to do is have a chief information officer, for lack of a better term. That's what corporations call them. But that's somebody that handles press releases, that keeps the website up to date. Our website's pretty clunky. It's ancient.
Yeah.
And I'm not throwing stones at the person that built it. We haven't told them to do anything different. It does cost money. But we want to have somebody that handles press releases, that if we have anything like the Decker fire and the news people show up and stick a microphone in somebody's face, that they're sticking the microphone in the public affairs person's face and not just somebody that goes, woo, get the deer in the headlights look. Some of us have had limited public affairs training. I had a lot at Marine Command and Staff College, but I'm still not, it's not my job. It's not my trade.
Yeah.
And it's just like if you try to do everything, you do nothing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Other questions?
Not really a question, just a comment. I just wanted to say thank you for everything you have done.
Yeah.
It's just listening to you, it's about 5 times more than I thought you had to do. So thank you. It's got to be quite an effort, and I'm sure it goes unthanked a lot. But I just wanted to say here, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. And thank all of you for coming. It says it on my website. I really enjoy this work. If you didn't enjoy it, I don't know why you'd do it. I mean, it's like somebody kind of turned an old phrase around on me one time. Said, life's too long to be miserable. It's 4 years of this is too long if you don't like it.
Yeah.
2 weeks of it is too long if you don't like it. And I really do enjoy it, helping people with issues. Yes, ma'am.
And then we also want to thank Evelyn for all the support.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, yes. Yay!
Yeah, I don't know.
Ellen!
She gets to hear the downside on the bad days.
I don't know why he does it. I don't.
That was my question. Is how do you get all this energy to do this when you could retire and enjoy just relaxing? And I look at people in their retirement years spending all this effort trying to govern and do all these things, and it's like they have the money to be on on their land with their grandchildren. And what drives you?
Well, it's just that purpose-driven thing I was talking about. I want to do my best. I guess there's a little bit of displacement. I'll be arrogant enough to say this in this group and share it with people. But I honest to God think for this time, for this period in history, and to meet the residency requirement of living in District 1, I'm the best person for the job. I think I've got
We agree.
Nothing wrong with saying that.
I got the experience and I'm willing to do it.